Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here, the host of the System Simplified podcast, where I feature top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And today's episode is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we create, document, optimize, and implement processes and procedures so businesses can grow and scale. And it's my honor to introduce today's podcast guest, Eisha Armstrong. Hi, Eisha.
Hello, it's great to be here, Adi.
It's great to have you. We're going to have an amazing conversation, and it's going to be basically, if you're listening to us right now and you have a service business, this podcast is for you. And even if you don't, you should still listen because you're going to gain valuable information. But we're going to talk about how to actually productize a service-based business, which I know that a lot of, we service many clients in the professional services arena, law firms, engineering firms, IT firms. We create the processes and procedures, but it's still a lot of them, it's trading time for money. Even if you don't bill by the hour, it's still trading your time for money. And the dream is to be able to productize. And now we're also going to integrate in our conversation how to use AI with it. So it's going to be incredible. So technology, productizing your service. Eisha, before we start, I want to read your bio because I need to, we need to make sure that I introduce you correctly. And then I'm going to ask you some questions about yourself to introduce yourself more, and we'll dive into our conversation.
Perfect.
Sounds good?
Yes.
Okay, great. Awesome. So you have more than 25 years of product management and product leadership experience in the data and information service industries. And you are the executive chairman and co-founder of Vecteris, where you work with B2B service companies to productize their offerings, which is incredible. And you also are very well educated. You went to the Harvard Business School. You have an MBA from the Harvard Business School. But you're also, and that's an incredible fun fact, and I love that, you're a certified yoga teacher. You climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, and you love to hike, bike, kayak, and ski. So you're definitely not just sitting there in the office, but you are out there, doing all the right things. So that's really cool. So Eisha, before we dive into our subject, tell us more about yourself. How did you get to where you are today? Like, what is your journey?
Yeah, so I spent the first most of my career at a company that was really the pioneer of how do you productize consulting services. So how do you take something that was delivered through people and turn it into products that can be delivered in a more scalable fashion? So content, data, software, all forms of products that we created to help companies implement ideas that they would typically hire consultants to advise them on. So that's where I learned how to productize services. And I started there right out of undergrad. They ended up sending me to Harvard for my MBA, paying for it, which was great. Came back and really helped them grow to a global firm. I started, they had 200 employees. When I left, they had 5,000. So great run. And then I started Vecteris with a colleague of mine who also worked at the same company, because we saw more and more B2B services firms asking this question: how can we do the same thing? How can we productize our services? Whether it's a law firm that's trying to scale, accounting firm, consulting firm, marketing agency, you name it. But firms who are normally delivering value through people and now wanting to standardize and usually use technology to deliver that value in the form of something we call a product. And at the time that we launched the company, there was a lot of private equity money coming into B2B services. And a big part of their investment thesis was, if we can productize services, we'll get a higher valuation on their investment. So that was really driving demand. Then COVID hit, and digitization of service delivery became a really urgent need for a lot of firms that we work with. And now we have generative AI. And they're asking, how can we use generative AI not only to kind of improve the efficiency of what we're currently doing, but perhaps to solve new customer problems in a more scalable way that we couldn't before.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's talk about productizing a service. So give us an example of what does it mean to productize a service?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I like to think of it in terms of a spectrum, or let's say a ladder. So most B2B services firms are at the lowest rung of the ladder. They're in customized services. So like you said, they're trading time for money. They're delivering value through people. And everything that they're doing is more or less bespoke or customized or white glove. They haven't standardized yet. And that's where you get to the next rung of the ladder, what we actually call productized services. So this is where you start to standardize the types of services you do. You create more packages. You're definitely doing value-based pricing at this point. And it's easier for more people to deliver those services at the same quality level. You might also start using technology internally to automate some of the work that your professionals are doing, especially, and we're seeing this now with generative AI. But the delivery experience for the client still feels the same way. It's still a service being delivered by people, but the way that they're delivering it may be more standardized and tech-enabled, packaged and priced more like a product. So that's the next rung of the ladder.
Let's take an example of
give me
a case study.
So a great marketing agency that we work with here in Cincinnati called Relevate Health. And they were a classic marketing agency that would work with big pharmaceutical brands and do their campaigns when they launch a new drug. Well, what they saw was they were doing the same thing over and over for a lot of these brands, which was going out into key markets where there was a lot of disease for these drugs, and identifying influencer doctors, getting these influencer doctors to give testimonials about the new drugs, and then use those in the marketing campaigns. So they actually created a productized service, which they gave a name. So usually a productized service has a name. They called it Practice Share. And they developed an internal technology to identify the key markets, identify the influencer doctors, even to collect the testimonials from the influencer doctors. So they're using technology. And the way to price it to the pharma brands is not based on time and materials. It's based on the number of markets that they want to use this particular practice share technique in. So that's, I think, a great example of it. Also, you look at generative AI right now, any accounting firm that's using AI tools to automate their audits, or law firms that are using AI tools to automate discovery, even maybe marketing agencies that are using AI to augment copywriting. That would also be a form of productizing your service, because you're using technology to do something that people used to do, but the end experience still feels the same to the client. Does that help?
Absolutely, yes. So let's talk about, let's say, a law firm. How can they productize their offerings?
Yeah, so one way is just to internally use technology and standardize the way that they deliver. And again, that would be productized services. And maybe
how does it reflect to the customer? So let's say, for instance, I can see that. So let's say, for instance, we can take a specific example, but let's say, for instance, you're a marketing company and you're providing, let's say, news. I'm just simplifying it so we can think with it, right? So let's say in the past, you will charge, okay, it takes me 5 hours to write the newsletter. I'm writing it for you. Now you can say, okay, so the newsletter will cost you, blah, let's say $500 a month. Now you use AI behind the scenes in order to actually generate and help and do it faster. So now you can actually sell the product. So so your salespeople can go, okay, it's $500 per newsletter or per package of newsletter. You're getting the design, you're getting the content, you're getting this. This is what you give us. This is what we give you, right? I mean, that would be an example of a productizing.
That's an example of what we call productized service. So it's still people doing most of the work. The experience still feels the same for the client. That is different from the next rung of the ladder, which is a product. So rather than I'm going to write your newsletter for you, a product could be, you can take this online training class and it'll teach you how to write a newsletter. Or a product as a service is you can subscribe to this software that I've created that will use AI to generate the newsletter for you. We'll send it out there. There's no people involved. So it's a spectrum. Like I said, you've got productized service as kind of that first rung of the ladder. Then you have products, which are one-time things you can buy, like an online course or a book or a data file. And then you have products as a service, which are no people involved. It's pure product, software as a service, data as a service, learning as a service would all be forms of product as a service.
Love it. So do you think that every service professionals or every service office agency should have this all three?
No, absolutely not. And I think that's a misnomer, is that when I talk about productizing, people think I'm talking about, becoming a software company. And it's like, no, usually let's just explore what you can do in that first rung of that ladder, that productizing your service. Take what you're already doing it, standardize it, tech enable it, price it and package it like a product. And perhaps it becomes like a subscription, you $500 a month, like you said, for a newsletter. That is usually enough for most businesses to really get a significant scale. Now, they may also then see new opportunities to perhaps create a product, like a software as a service product or a data as a service product that they bundle with their services. And that's a strategy that we call bundled solutions, where you're selling both services and products, but you're selling it as a solution to your customer. We're going to do some like upfront workshops and discovery and process redesign, and then you're going to subscribe to this piece of software that's going to help you maintain everything we just did, for example.
Got it. That's very smart. And but what about, usually when you do, like even you productize your services, let's say you are a CFO, a fractional CFO, a law firm, it's still a high ticket price. Do you believe that you also need to have some kind of a product, like, let's say, a book or a course that is lower priced, but it gets people in the door, like knowing about you and seeing you, like what you can do, so then they can sign up for your higher ticket price, like the services themselves?
Yeah, I think that's a great strategy. So we call that a step-on strategy, where you create a lower price and usually very scalable, easy to deliver product that people can consume that really is more like lead generation, right. Where you build that know, like, and trust. That is different from I'm going to create a lower price product for a completely different market segment that probably can't afford my higher price things. And that's a mistake we see a lot of companies make when they productize. They're like, oh, I'm going to create something for a more price sensitive market that wants to DIY it. And these are people who are never going to buy your higher price things. That's actually really hard to do because you don't have experience with that market segment.
So you feel like it's a mistake? Because I've seen it happen, and I thought about it myself. I go like, okay, like we are a done it for you consultancy, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. The reason why I started it, why it became a done it for you, because we were doing everything. We were basically more coaching and consulting. And then I will tell my clients, you need processes and procedures, week after week after week after week, and nothing will happen. And then I ask them, well, how about if I do it for you? And they will go, yes. So that was a niche that they needed it. They need somebody to come and document for them, because I know that no matter how many courses I'm going to deliver to them, they're not going to do it themselves. Now, I do have, I apply what you said, like in terms of we customize. So first of all, what we needed to do is to really identify the niche and throw away everything that doesn't align with it, right? Correct. And now we have a very specific process that we walk every client through. We have consultants, we have technical writers. I mean, we are now definitely expanded to a whole team, but it's like a machine. It goes, this is what we do up front with the client, basically face to face. Then we have behind the scenes. Then we deliver it this way. It's like basically like a production. That's why it's a product, is a service. We have a specific product that then we can charge. This is what you are getting. This is the price. This is what you're getting. and this is it. So that will be like basically productizing our service.
Absolutely.
Now you have, this is not for everyone, it's an investment. So now you have those companies that go, well, I can't afford it because they're smaller, they're not really our target market, right?
Right.
Or maybe they're not a profitable, whatever they feel like why they can't afford it, whatever. So then I was thinking, okay, well, should we create a course? But the truth is that probably not, because it's not our target market.
Yeah. So what we do, Adi, is we teach business owners, firm leaders, how to take a product mindset in evaluating these opportunities and do exactly what you said. Who is the target market? Is it an attractive target market? Like, is it big? Is it growing? Do they have money to pay? But also, is it easy for us to access? Do we already have brand recognition with it? So we teach them how to think like a product leader thinks. Before you invest the money in building the product, let's evaluate, like, is this even an attractive market segment for you? Okay, if it is an attractive market segment, what are their problems? And then how could you solve those problems in a profitable way for you? Now, there might be, and there typically is a lot of upfront investment. So then it's like, okay, well, let's build a business case. How much upfront investment is going to be required to build the product? When can you expect a return on that investment? Do you have enough cash to fund it? Because you're not going to, it's really easy to like get a return on a new service because a client says yes, you give them a statement of work, they say yes, they pay you, right? And then you do the work, right? But with a product, you have to take a leap of faith that this is you're going to make a big upfront investment in the development of it. There are ways to de-risk it, and we teach companies how to do that. But there's still some upfront investment, not only in the building it, but then also in the marketing of it and in the sales of it. And that's the thing with a new market segment, like a more price-sensitive one, which is you probably have to build a different marketing and sales engine than what you have right now if you're not used to reaching that market segment. And then you've got to add that to your business case. Okay, does this still make financial sense? And so it's hard for me to say like, yay, nay. I can tell you what I've seen, but I think the most important thing is that you have to take a product mindset to evaluating these opportunities and not just say, oh, like one client asked for this, therefore there must be an attractive market for it.
Right, that's exactly right. You have to survey it, you have to make sure that it actually works. Absolutely. So I agree, and one of the things that I also found is like, like for us, I'm just because I have the experience with ourselves, we basically document, right? We document it for you, but the majority, like the importance is really to make sure that those processes are being followed by all. Mm-hmm. So then I found that I'm basically repeating the same thing to each one of my consultants, repeating the same, like the explanation of how do we actually roll it out and how do we make sure it's followed by all. That part can be like in a video that everybody watches, as opposed to having a live presentation every single time. And then we actually go into the hands-on implementation where you have to have a human and you have to resolve the specific problems for that specific company that no AI will ever replace. But you can definitely probably identify the things that you're repeating yourself, and you can probably use videos or workbooks or whatnot, right? So people are prepared. Do you find that successful, that people actually use that, like meaning the clients will use it and prepare?
Yeah, and in fact, that's where we see a lot of more technology products, like software products, come from. So it usually starts with the firm or the agency or the entrepreneur creating something to use internally, right? Whether it's a video or it's, a process flow in Asana or, something like that. And then they realize, wait a minute, this could actually become a software product or a training product that our clients could use directly. Let's see if we can sell it. So usually most technology starts just like you're talking about. It's a way for you to improve the scalability and the quality of delivery, right? When it's done the same way over and over again, the quality of delivery should be consistent.
Absolutely, because it gets replicated, and that is like the truth. Like just like documenting processes and procedures is for the same reason, because you have to replicate that action over and over again the same way, consistent. So every single client gets the same treatment, not depending on what you remember to do one day or how you feel about it, etc. Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. What are some of the tips of how to actually figure out how to price your packages?
Oh, that's a great question. So the first one is not to do cost plus.
Meaning
So,
what?
so most of us, especially if we've been making our money by selling time, we take, whatever the hourly rate is times 3. The hourly rate is the cost, times 3 is kind of the, standard professional services markup. And that's the price. When you're pricing a product, you want to price based on the value. So how much value are you creating for your customers? And that requires a little bit of research, right? So you have to talk to customers, how expensive is this problem for you right now? How much have you budgeted to solve the problem? What would it be worth to you to have this problem
It's the lost
solved?
opportunity. I mean, honestly, like I see it like with my clients, I always ask them, okay, so you're going to invest with us. We're going to create those processes to onboard, let's say an accounting firm, an example, because you work with accounting firms as well. So I sat down with the decision makers and I go, okay, so we're going to create basically a training manual to train a new accountant that you onboard, like basically a new accountant that you are onboarding to your firm. Of course, we're not going to teach them how to do a tax return, but going to teach them about all the systems that you have, what are your procedures, etc. What do you do now? How do you, well, now we basically throw them in there. So sometimes they don't stick and there is no retention. So that costs money because bring them anybody, when you just, when you even just have them sign their forms, it costs you money because your HR person is working on it. The payroll company already charging you. This is charging you, all of that, not to talk about that, but that costs you money. But if they're there with you for 3 months and now they're leaving, or even 6 months and they're leaving because they're not satisfied, that costs you a lot of money because you have to start over. And then they told me that one of the senior partners actually spends the time giving them all the information and working with them when they charge, I don't know, like let's say they charge $500 an hour. Okay, so how much is that worth? And when you actually add everything up, that was like what they are going to save was basically 5x what they were going to pay us one time, where they can multiply it for each new employee they're bringing on. So when you put it in that perspective, then it really has value.
Absolutely. I love that example. That's such a great example. So really understanding what is the value you're creating for customers when they use your productized service or your product, and then pricing your product at a fraction of that value. So it's a really easy decision.
Absolutely.
And there are certainly more sophisticated ways to like hone in on the right range of pricing. And that's something that we work with companies to teach them how to do, to evaluate that. And then mostly you just have to test and learn. And I think this is a big mindset shift for a lot of B2B services firms, is that, we're so used, Adi, to putting out like these near perfect deliverables and always knowing the answer, being the expert. So this idea that we don't actually know the answer on what is the right price, and we may not get it right the first time, can be really uncomfortable, but it's the best way to figure out the pricing. So put something out there, see how it lands, get some feedback, do some research, and then revise. Okay, how does that work? Okay, revise. And so this thinking that we have to get it perfect right out of the gates and that we're not going to continue to iterate is something that leads a lot of organizations to take too long to productize, or quite frankly, spend too much money that ends up being wasted when they're productizing.
Absolutely. I agree. I completely agree. I had another question in terms of the presentation of it. Do you believe that you have to present, like the good, better, best? Like, do you like to present 3 options?
That's a great question. So packaging should always should most of the time tie to your different personas. So we talked about, part of taking a product mindset is understanding your market. Who is your target market? And usually within that target market, you will have different personas. Those personas could be based on something like size of organization, size of budget, in which case good, better, best might be the right way to package it, where you have kind of good, fewer features, more attractive to a smaller, price-sensitive market segment, best, a lot more features, priced for a price-insensitive segment, right? So that's good, better, best is good if you're thinking about how can I offer kind of a range of price points. But that's not actually always the best way to package, because your personas may all be the same company size with the same budget, but they may be of different maturity levels. So you may have really immature, like in the case of your business, they've never thought about systems and processes. So they need something different in their package than maybe kind of a medium maturity client. They need a different set of things versus a more higher maturity client. So the packages should reflect the needs of the persona, not necessarily this, we have to have a inexpensive price, a middle price, a higher price.
Good. Excellent. I think it's a great idea. It's a great advice. Now, let's talk about your book. So you have a book.
Yes.
Tell us about
it. Yeah. So my first book came out in 2021. It's called Productize. And it really is an overview of the what we call 7 deadly sins that we see services firms make when they try to productize, and then how to avoid those mistakes. So, things like creating a product that doesn't really solve a problem. That's a mistake we see a lot of people make, or putting a product out there that you haven't tested with customers. It's another mistake we see. So we talk about those mistakes and how to avoid them. And I think it's a great kind of overview and introduction to why productization is valuable, but the things that you need to keep in mind if you're going to go down that path. The second book I wrote is called Fearless. And this is about how your mindset needs to shift as a services leader, perhaps a services entrepreneur, if you're going to productize. And if you run a large services organization, how the culture will need to shift in order to be successful in productization. And then I have a new book coming out in September called Commercialize. And that is all about the go-to-market. So your questions around pricing, packaging, messaging, marketing, what sales channels should you be using when you're selling a more productized approach. We dig all into those.
That's awesome. So we're going to include all of that in our show notes so our listeners can definitely get it and read it, because you are definitely an expert in this area. And just listening to you, it's amazing. You can totally have the whole shift in that. And if you have a consultancy or a marketing agency, you can totally, and you're not productizing, that is what you need to do. It's absolutely the right thing to do.
Yeah, and I think the big takeaway is, look, the benefits are huge. So, you can reduce burnout in your team. You can reduce your own burnout. You can charge more, maybe get a higher value for your business.
Well, you make it sellable, because I think that's a problem that consultancies have in terms of like, okay, it's on me, or I know that I had the same problem until I started doing that, because I felt like, well, I will never be able to replace myself, because I don't know how I'm doing. Every single time I'm reinventing the wheel, and I go like, it can't be that way. How do we do it? And I force myself to actually write our own processes and create that process. So then I can bring on consultants that can basically deliver the same value to our clients. So that is the only way that you can actually create a business, a consultancy or a service business that does not depend on you and your personality, and you can actually sell.
Exactly. Yes. And I think you can also have a bigger impact on the world, right?
Absolutely.
It's not just about you. You can reach more clients. You can take a vacation.
And you can provide more opportunities to other professionals, because they can learn it, and now they can work for you and actually deliver and create the same results. I agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I don't like to use fear as a motivator, but if I may, I will say that generative AI has the potential to disrupt a lot of service providers. So if we're not actively experimenting with it and figuring out how to use it in our service delivery, there's a chance that something may come along and completely put us out of business. So I think that's another motivator, is to think about competition and disruption.
Yeah, I don't, because we are also experimenting with it. I don't think it will. You're right. If somebody doesn't do something, it's the horse, and the carriage and the car. You could have at the same time, in the past, you could have like a delivery service, and you were basically delivering with a horse and a carriage. But then when the car came, you realize that you have to move to a car, and you market accordingly, and you advertise accordingly, and you hire drivers, as opposed to sticking with the horse and the carriage that went away. So I think you can you can basically, you will have to replace some segments of the business with AI to be competitive, but then you can offer other services or other segments that are not offered, that AI cannot help, right? Like in my perspective, like, how am I applying it in my business? So I'm excited because we can actually create a whole segment where the documentation, maybe it's a little bit more automatic, but still the asking the questions, the best practices, the process improvement, the training we can actually allocate more resources towards that. So everything will get elevated to the next level.
Exactly. Yeah. That's
with
so
a law
smart.
firm, I mean, you can go right on ChatGPT and I said, I need a non-disclosure agreement. I get a non-disclosure agreement. In the past, I had to call my lawyer.
Right.
But now I can, if you're a law firm, okay, so how do we actually, but also the risks are bigger, right? So in terms of the cybersecurity, in terms of like what can happen. So yes, we can generate that NDA online, but what separates you? Like what advice can you actually give? Or what subscription can you give to people so they can call you at any time and they're not afraid of calling you, because every time they call you, the clock starts ticking. So what is it that you can provide that ChatGPT cannot provide for you?
Yeah, I love that quote. AI will not replace humans, but humans who use AI will replace humans who don't use AI.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Very true. And that's the word. You always have to stay one step ahead and learn and be innovative and, just observe what's happening and learn and be competent with it. So I love that. Aisha, that's been a fantastic conversation. So people are going to look for your books, but if they want to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
Oh, LinkedIn. So I love LinkedIn. Happy to connect with anyone. If you'd like something I said, let me know in your connection request. And then my company is, as you mentioned, Vecteris.com, Vecteris.com. You can read more about how we work with customers there.
Awesome. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast.
Oh, it was my pleasure, Adi. Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.